Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to a very special presentation and Q&A with Curator of Collections from the Robert McLaughlin Gallery, Sonya Jones. We have some very special guests as well joining us from the Durham College faculty. We have Executive Dean Greg Murphy with us this morning. We have Program Coordinator of Photography, Brian Stevens, and faculty members, Alan Fournier and Stephen Crawford, as well as students joining us this morning. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Bedford, and I am one of the full-time faculty at Durham College, and really excited to bring this very special opportunity to you as first-year students in 2021. I'm going to take a moment. Greg, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. If I can get my video to stay on. Really good to have this project available to us, Sonya. So thank you very much. And thank you, Jennifer, for working on this. I think it's a great opportunity for students to not just have their professors look at their work. They get familiar with professors and they start thinking of them as not as important as external voices. And to some extent, that's true in that you form a relationship with students. And then when someone outside comes and look at it, they don't have a vested interest in the student's success per se. They don't know the student. They don't have any baggage with them. So they're just looking at the work. And that curating of that work and that, writing about it, talking about it, taking it seriously, I think that's really important for students. And it brings them a little closer to a professional milieu. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. So I hope today is informative and gives a lot of context about, the Robert McLaughlin Gallery, the Bulkley Collection, and this project in particular. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about this wonderful partnership that we're working on that we've called Perspective and Prospective, and I'm going to go into that title a little bit later in the lecture if you have any questions around that. So I am going to be covering quite a bit today. So it's not really an agenda, but just to give you a full overview of everything that's going to be covered, because I am going to be covering a lot of ground. So a very brief introduction to the Robert McLaughlin Gallery for any students who aren't familiar with the gallery. And then talking about who was Thomas Bulkley and what the Thomas Bulkley collection is. And then talking about some of the problems with the collection and kind of looking at the collection through a critical lens. And then through discussing what the future of this collection looks like and how important collecting today's history is. And then I'm going to go into kind of this examples of past community-based projects just for kind of inspiration, but also just how each project kind of has a different focus and a different outcome. And then talk specifically about our project and then how PhotoVoice can be kind of an effective tool in thinking around this project, followed by some questions, of course, at the end. So for those of you who are not based in the Durham region, this is the outside of the Robert McLaughlin Gallery, and we miss having lots of people in the building. We are now open to the public, but people are trickling in, but we're still not at the stage that we can have large gatherings, and we really miss that. But it's the largest public art gallery in the Durham region. We have about 36,000 square feet of space that was designed by a world-renowned architect, Arthur Erickson. And we have an art collection of over 4,700 artworks that range from historical, modern, and contemporary work. And we have 6 different exhibition spaces. And so not only do we show exhibitions, we have a gift shop, we have studio spaces, a library and archives, and in normal times, we have a lot of community gathering and events in the gallery space. So again, just to kind of give you a sense of what our values are at the RMG, and we're actually in the process of working on a new strategic plan for 2022, but a lot of this stuff is still going to apply, is that Oshawa and Durham region flourish through arts and culture and community connection and resilience is our vision. Our mission is that we work together with our communities to create conversations through the arts that encourage people to experience the world differently. And this kind of project fits right into that. And then our guiding principles is that we put people first, we contribute to a vibrant community, and we embrace sustainable innovation. So rather than me kind of go blah, blah about the RMG, which I could a little bit longer probably, I'm going to just show a very short 30-second clip that kind of features one of the events that I think that is being missed the most by the RMG, but also the community, is this monthly event that pre-COVID that we used to have every first Friday of the month. We would invite community into our space for free. Performances, music, studio demonstrations, exhibition openings, and basically just a place to kind of gather for arts and culture in the community. And that's really kind of at the heart of what the RMG does, is to be a connector for the arts community in Oshawa and the Durham region. And so I hope the sound isn't too loud, but I'm going to start it and adjust it, hopefully. And we miss those events greatly. And actually, a lot of the photographs documenting those events are taken by Durham College photography volunteer students in the past. So they worked with our communications team to kind of come together and take photographs of these events. So yeah, we really miss gathering community, and hope to one day invite you all back into the space and enjoy that event. So specifically the collection that we'll be talking about today is the Thomas Boakley collection. And it's a collection of over 3,500 photographs that kind of tell the visual history of Oshawa. But one of the most common misconceptions about this collection is that these photographs were all taken by the same man, Thomas Boakley. But in fact, he actually just collected the photographs into this collection. And he did so in various ways, some kind of traditional ways, where you'd get photographs from, antique stores or different fairs and things like that. But then in very untraditional ways too, where he would take reproductions of other people's private, personal family albums. He would also give bottles of whiskeys to waste management employees if they found albums in the garbage. These are all the stories that come about of how he gathered this collection together. This is Thomas Boakley. He put together a 3-volume book that kind of encompasses a large portion of the collection, because at the end of the day, that was what he was doing. He was putting together a pictorial documentation of Oshawa's history. And then in 1985, he gifted it to the gallery, and he did so for it to be preserved for future generations, to be used as a community resource. So it's actually available to search on our website, and also to be incorporated into gallery programs to kind of, share this resource with the community in different ways, and also engage the community with it through exhibitions and programming. So what was the motivation for Boakley in putting together this collection? Like, what was his goal in putting together this visual history of Oshawa? And where does that kind of tradition of putting this collection of images, archival images representing a local narrative, what is the history behind that? So that's what I'm going to first talk about. So the motivation really follows in the tradition of the amateur photographic record and survey movement that occurred mostly in England between approximately 1885 and 1918. And this movement was largely led by photography societies, which comprised of mostly amateur photographers. And the goal that they had was to create a photographic archive for the future that documented, things like antiquities, historical buildings, customs and practices, and human experiences. And they really wanted to capture a true pictorial history of the present day. So the photographers dedicated to this movement were actually responding to kind of 2 social shifts at the time in society. So first one, what is the growth of photography as a really popular and more accessible pastime and medium, and kind of a sense of a rapidly changing social and physical landscape. So this kind of feeling of losses and gains of industrialization and urban and suburban growth. So there was this fear of loss in why they wanted to document these historical buildings, but there was also a sense of future, kind of the anticipated future. So one of the things was to encourage photographers to kind of take part in this kind of national movement was to stress that they were actually providing a service to the nation, that they were kind of emphasizing it as being kind of the social duty in creating an archival base for the future. So by recruiting photography societies to do this work, the results were much more representative of actual local places and scenes, which is actually really beneficial. So despite having kind of assigned subject priority lists like antiquities, historical churches, and things like that, the amateur photographies kind of brought with them things that they believed what was important. And so the places and things that they knew well really locally. So by doing so, those scenes and places were kind of elevated in importance and significance on a national level, just by the photographer choosing to photograph them, right? So the images in these collections that exist in library and archives throughout Europe and some in the States as well, is the images really reflect what people valued about their past and their current lifetime. But they really weren't just about kind of glorification of a nation, but also to kind of create a sense of community and identity and kind of a group of people inhabiting a common space. But just like there's problems with the Thomas Bulkley collection, there were problems with the survey photographs as produced as well, because as the libraries and archives kind of collected these images, they would be like submitted through the mail and they would be just added to these collections. Many of the photographers are unidentified. So the thoughts as these library and archives kind of received these submissions was that they were being added to a collective memory. So it didn't really matter who the photographers were and what the stories of those photographers were, which is a real kind of a loss in terms of the story behind the people that took these photographs. So Bulkley's motivation was super similar to this photographic survey movement. He too was really concerned with documenting and recording the past, present, and future. So he wasn't associated with the Photography Society, but like them, he wanted to create a visible past for the future, but also to create, very importantly, a local narrative. And so he was this one man kind of selected and collected what he deemed important for that local narrative. And so just like the photographic societies, there's a lot of problems with the collection. And I'll expand on that a little bit later in terms of kind of one man choosing what was important to collect for this kind of collective history of a community. So as he was collecting these images, his intention when he gave it to the gallery as well was that it would continue to grow. So even though he wasn't the photographer behind them, he actually took up photography in the 70s and took photographs of Oshawa as it existed in his lifetime. And his vision was that it would continue to do that, that at the gallery, we would continue to document Oshawa as it evolved and changed. However, in the first 20 years after it was given to the gallery, it kind of stayed static, just kind of representing the original gift at the RMG with a few donations of more historical photographs of Oshawa. So not really the current day Oshawa being represented. So in working with the collection over the last 14 years, I've kind of shifted how we grow and program the collection from relying on just kind of donations of historical photographs to actively pursuing various perspectives of present day reality within the community. And that's kind of what this, the spirit behind this project is. So I just want to give you a snapshot for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bulkley collection of what the bulk of the historical photographs represent. Because even though I will discuss the problems with the collection afterwards, a lot of these documentation pictures are super important to the community's history. So a large portion of the collection represents industry, which has a significant importance to Oshawa's history. It was known as kind of the Manchester of Canada, which was kind of a throwback to kind of the idea that Oshawa was an industrial city. And that identity is shifting, as we all know, and industry still plays an important role, but it's not the primary drive of our economic reality right now. So here's General Motors being built in 1918, after they merged with the McLaughlin carriage company, motor car company, and it became General Motors of Canada. I do lectures on all these topics, but I'm going to try to give you just the Coles notes of some of these photographs. But here is an assembly line of inside General Motors in the 1920s of an upholstery department for the chairs of these vehicles that they were producing here in Oshawa. And then in another important and very large factory that existed actually right downtown Oshawa was the Williams Piano Works. And this was a factory that produced mostly pianos, and a very famous piano that was known across internationally, but mostly nationally, which is the Williams New Scale piano. But they also produced small instruments as well, and later some radios. And here's a look inside the factory as well, which a lot of our industry pictures show the exterior and then the factory kind of in working conditions. And then the Oshawa Railway Company, which was part of that economic boost of Oshawa, in that they were the ones shipping the goods and services throughout downtown Oshawa, because we actually had a freight train that went right downtown Oshawa that existed until 1963. So the Oshawa Railway Company being an important part of the industrial history of Oshawa. And then community events are very much covered, which is really wonderful. The times that community come together, gather, celebrate. So for parades, military displays, there's a huge parade collection, which is really fun, including lots of circus parades of different various circuses that came to town, where the streets would be lined with people to see the elephants and the camels, and hanging from the windows to get a closer look. They're just such a fun capture of a really engaging event. And then agricultural fairs. This one took place at Alexander Luke. It's the Scully races, that was a really important event for bedding in Oshawa. And then another aspect of the collection is major events. And when I say major events, usually it refers to kind of more tragic or disasters in Oshawa's history. So documenting those major events in the community's history, including the plane crash that crashed at the Four Corners, which is the main intersection in downtown Oshawa, which is Simcoe and King Street. And you can see by the crowd that has gathered at the bottom that this was a major event, and it took a lot to get this plane down from the telephone wires. And then we have a huge collection of fires. There was a lot of fires in Oshawa's history, including this department store of Woolworths and the fire department putting this fire out, which was in downtown Oshawa. And then flooding was a real issue in Oshawa's history before they kind of fixed and rejigged the creeks and how the creek and water flowed through the community. We would experience flooding every winter. And in this case, this was a bridge getting washed away that unfortunately took a car with the family in it with it. And it was a tragic event in Oshawa's history that was covered far and wide in newspapers as this tragic event happened. This is the Harmony Bridge that was washed away. And then again, this typical things that are very survey movement and kind of documentation is fancy and important houses and buildings. So where the wealthy part of Oshawa's history lived. In this case, this was the Gibbs family home that later became a school for girls, a private school for girls. And then this was actually one of the early McLaughlin family houses prior to moving to Parkwood. And then civic buildings as well. So this was the very first town hall that housed the police department, the fire department, as well as the council offices at the time when Oshawa was incorporated as a city in 1924. But what I find is, so these are all kind of documentation. This kind of gives you a sense of what the landscape was of Oshawa's history. But the pictures that people connect with the most, the ones that really give you a sense of what life was like and people are mostly engaged with, are the pictures of everyday life. So the snapshots and moments in time that are captured. So not necessarily documentation of major events. So again, these ones are have captured people's imaginations for years, wanting to know more about the narrative, what the story behind this picture of bank tellers kind of gathering and watching a crowd and whispering. This is kind of a fun picture of a bird's eye view that Thomas Boakley took of this opening of TD Bank. There was a celebration for, I think it was the anniversary, pardon me. And so this is a picture that you just want to know what they're talking about. It's not necessarily representing what the event was, but it's a snapshot that kind of gives you a sense of what, you know, behind the scenes bank tellers' life was like and what they were. You just want to know more. It's very engaging. It's really filled with narrative. And then again, family outings, just regular, intimate things of everyday life that are important to people's lived experiences and daily realities. And this is a family taking a dip, a swim at Lakeview Park together. And it's just a snapshot of a fun family outing where the children are obviously having a wonderful time. And then the behind the scenes aspect. So we have these pictures of the exterior of important local businesses. This is the Globe Diner, which was a really important early Chinese establishment in Oshawa's history. And this is a behind the scenes of the staff and the family coming together for a meal after hours. So again, this interesting picture that gives you a different sense of what the Globe Diner was all about and the people that actually worked there and ran it and owned it. And then this photograph that some people find creepy, but I find it very fascinating. So this is just a father taking his children for a car ride, because at the time, not very many people had cars. It was an exciting thing, kind of where that expression, you know, going for a Sunday drive comes from. So here's a child with pure joy on her face as she's so excited to go on a car ride. But obviously the two children sitting in the front seat there were moving, and so they're a little blurry and they have this like ghost-like thing. But again, this picture that fascinates, right, of just a simple moment in time. And then more kind of intimate and emotionally rife pictures that, you know, this is soldiers before they got shipped off to training at the train station saying goodbye to their families. So it's interesting because they've got all these smiles on their faces and we know what they're heading towards, and you just want to know more about them. You want to know what happened to them. You want to know, you know, what the children are feeling, and you're feeling things as you look at this picture. So it's again just this picture that has this really powerful effect on our imagination. And then this one always is one of those photographs that has kind of enthralled people for years, wanting to know what is going on in this picture. And this is a group of friends who they did like this photo shoot. So this is actually a bit of a photograph that's a mystery in the collection, is that we don't know who these individuals are, what they were doing, but it kind of seems like a bunch of friends, you know, climbing on structures like teenagers do, and, you know, taking snapshots and kind of having fun together. This looks like it could be on Instagram or something, but for me, this one has always fascinated and you want to know more. And there's this kind of artistic quality to it as well. The perspective, looking up at this gateway, which was Alexandra Park, which still exists today, right outside of the hospital. And this was the entranceway to that park, which was quite high. So they climbed this large structure. So again, filled with mystery. You want to know more. Who are these people? And a photograph that's blurry, you know, it's obviously was taken really quickly, but it's still a really powerful photograph of an intimate scene where, you know, there's these friends or a relationship. And when you know the context of this picture, it gives a little bit more history of what's actually happening. But when you just look at the picture alone, you want to know who these people are, where they're going, what is their relationship. The story is that they're actually heading towards the 1937 strike that General Motors had that really changed the way that unions had representation in the auto industry. And it was supported by women and men, all employees, and here they are heading towards the strike. But again, this picture without that context is also just a beautiful, interesting picture of two people walking down the street. So I've mentioned that I would cover kind of what the problems with the collection is, and I think it's become a little bit obvious in some of the things that I've said, but the collection really lacks the stories and perspectives of many of Oshawa's residents. So it was put together by one man who chose what he believed was important to collect, and he did so with very good intentions. He wanted to put together this visual history. However, that perspective is a white Eurocentric viewpoint. Another issue with the collection, which is it's a very unique collection of photographs, is that 80% of the photographs, even though they're historical photographs, they're actually reproductions. So some of the issues is that the originals exist elsewhere. So at times the Oshawa Museum and Archives have copies of these photographs, or the Oshawa Library. But these three organizations, we all share resources and work together. So that helps it a lot. That makes it a lot easier. But it's an interesting, it's hard to call it an archives when these aren't original photographs. But that's okay. You have to think of it as this kind of collective visual history. And then another obviously major issue is that we don't know who the photographers are for the majority of these images, and including source material. So I mentioned that Thomas Boakley would get different people's private albums and scan them, or take photographs of them, I mean, not scan, or that he would, get them through the garbage, different methods like that. And so the source material is just missing. Again, this idea of it being this collective memory rather than kind of acknowledging who is behind the camera, which is actually a really important part of that local narrative of why they took this picture, why were they there, what were they doing, all these things that, also fascinate us about photographs. We want to know who the photographers are, and that's really important. And so as you can imagine, all these issues around reproductions and not knowing source material is that copyright is very difficult with this photograph collection. And so I just want to touch a little bit and then about what the future of this collection looks like, and kind of how Prospective kind of fits in with this, is that we are kind of focusing on community-based projects. So again, putting the cameras into the hands of the community members to gain their perspective, so that as the curator of the collection, I'm not a gatekeeper of just all the content. And although there is that aspect of curating exhibitions, it's a little different than kind of coming together for this kind of collection. But speaking of, programming, I really want to expand what programming actually looks like, and it not just be a result-based project. So not always thinking that these photographs have to end up in the collection, and think about it as more of, bringing community voices together in a wider way that isn't necessarily just adding to the collection. It's more just working with community to kind of have these discussions about what, this community's perspective is, and all the various perspectives that exist out there, as well as just showing their voices. And then obviously I'm still dedicated to collecting to documenting the evolution of Oshawa. So kind of its landscape in general. I think that's an important part of these kind of collections. And then I'm exploring using the concept of PhotoVoice to kind of highlight particular perspectives or social issues within the community, and how that can be a really an effective tool to do so. So just to kind of talk about collecting today's history and what that means. And there's that kind of saying that people say, it's like history is made every day. Well, that saying is absolutely true. And it's just a little bit of a different concept than it was back then. So because we have pictures readily available to us at all times, we can easily take digital images. And so it's about what it is that is important to the photographer. That's why I kind of stress how that is such a problem with the collection, is because the stories that photographers are telling need to be heard, and we want to know more about who those photographers are. But it's an interesting discussion and process to think about who's making decisions about what is deemed important today. So I always kind of do that exercise of what 100 years from now, what do the pictures from 2021 tell people about life right now? So one way that I've been kind of doing that exercise is through community partnerships, and each one has kind of resulted in a very different approach. And it's so interesting because that's the point of these community partnerships, is that bringing different perspectives, issues, different things to the forefront of these discussions about what a community collection is important. So I'm just going to show some examples. So one of the groups that I partnered on early on was the Oshawa Senior Citizens Camera Club, which again is like a photographic society, and they actually operated like one. They would, have a list of things that they wanted to photograph. They would go on out buildings together, as you saw in those pictures of the gentleman setting up the cameras. And so that was how they kind of operated. So that was a very, very documentation kind of style partnership. So they wanted to capture how, what Oshawa, important community events, what the buildings look like, things like that. So here's the Oshawa Generals during the Teddy Bear Drive by Ron Mead. And then this picture from 2015, taken by Jim Grieve, is just a really fascinating look of the height of Pokemon Go. So here he is taking a picture of people playing Pokemon Go at the park when it was really popular and everybody was getting outside to do that. So, again, really capturing a moment in time that's not just, showing us what life was like in 2015, but capturing kind of a historical moment that was important at that time. And then again, like I said, the seniors really loved kind of working with this idea of the evolution of the changing landscape of Oshawa, so documenting businesses and what Oshawa's important businesses that have existed in Oshawa for many years, including Steve's Leather Fashions in downtown Oshawa. And then also the people that make up the fabric of our community, including volunteers at St. Vincent Pelotti's kitchen. So again, that tradition of behind the scenes that, people, you want to know more about these people and, the important work that they do within the community. And then a little bit of a different partnership was with the AIDS Committee of Durham Region and PFLAG Canada, which was Come Out, which was a project that was really an exercise in addressing the real issue and omission of LGBTQ2+ stories from institutional archives. And making sure that those stories come to the forefront of the community and get collected from, again, this kind of idea of a community collection. And this was a bit of a different one because it wasn't really putting cameras in the hands as a program, and it's not done. It's still ongoing. The work doesn't finish with one project. This is ongoing representation needed. And this project acted more like a call for submissions. And so these are some of the photographs that came in. Again, like a moment of joy at a birthday party in 2006. I don't know, Jennifer, if you remember those gloves that were really big in 2006. So again, you don't realize what is actually being captured in just this everyday picture of a birthday party. It's, a particular fashion that was really big at the time. And also those confetti bombs that people did for photographs that were also big in 2006. And then more important community events like the Durham Pride Prom at the Ajax Community Center. And then this idea of how we take pictures with friends and document our pictures of ourselves, like snapshots in a selfie of Violet Seductions and Miss J en route to a Pride event in Ajax. So what I love about this is the selfie format, because it really does capture how we take photographs of ourselves and with our loved ones today. And then again, this tradition of community coming together and gathering for important events like the painting of the Rainbow Crosswalk at Trent University Durham campus by the Pride Club. And then again, these moments in time that will kind of live within a community's history, which unfortunately this one is a rally that took place outside the Calvary Baptist Church after the removal of an LGBTQ2+ member for their sexual orientation. And so again, this looks like a joyful event, but what it is actually people coming together in solidarity and support of a decision that was wrong. And then following in this kind of PhotoVoice tradition, which I'm going to be covering a little bit next, is the Community Development Council of Durham. So we did a project called Community Connection, which highlighted the experiences of newcomers and immigrants in Durham region. And what I loved about this project is these were, again, this idea of amateur photographers putting cameras in the hands of people to take a more intimate look of their own lived experiences. And so the results of the photographs were, quiet moments, intimate interior views, community events, special locations and family gatherings. But all these photographs really reflected their experiences and daily realities of living in their new community. And so just a few examples is this conversation circle of learning English, the volunteers that kind of help people feel more comfortable in just daily tasks in conversation, which is a wonderful thing in the community. people coming together to have fun with, and teach and share what their interests are with teaching Mahjong at a community center. And then this photograph, which was submitted for this project, which was really captures what 2020 was about in terms of gathering. This was a birthday party when we couldn't gather. Somebody took a screenshot. And as much as it might seem like not, a really clear and perfect picture, this is actually a really important picture for what life was like in 2020. It really captures it. And so it's an interesting photograph for social history for sure. And then this idea of making food together and gathering over food and teaching, people and making friends through teaching them what their, different recipes and stuff like that. I just love this picture of volunteers working in the kitchen. And then again, things in common, things that people have in common that are important to people. So gathering for Tai Chi at Lakeview Park. And then another community event at the Welcome Center in Ajax of Latin American dancing, and this beautiful photograph of people watching this wonderful performance. So again, these are taken by different members participating in that project. And so now for the Prospective project. So I just wanted to touch on the title a little bit and kind of what that means, because I think that at the end of the day, this will help with kind of thinking around this project. So the noun perspective refers to an attitude, an outlook, a set of ideals, a point of view, or a context. And it's obviously a photographic term as well in terms of portraying angles and viewpoints. So the importance behind that is your perspective. And then the adjective prospective is really future oriented. It means likely or expected to happen or become in the future. So this really references you all as students whose futures all have an immense amount of prospect. And so this idea of future and perspective, again, some of these themes that I've kind of talked about with the spirit behind the Thomas Bilkley collection and what we're trying to do with it. So the goal of the project is to really highlight your perspective and personal lived experiences as students. And I think that is such an important viewpoint and a really value and worthy story to hear. And so again, you're telling your story and we want you to kind of explore through photography what your lived experiences are. So I've just kind of captured some things that you can think about when you're kind of starting this project. So what is it like being a student right now? How do you feel connected to your community? What is something that's important to your life? What drives you? What grounds you? These things. So we just want to we want you to share your voice. And your lived experiences are incredibly important. And it's a really great exercise to kind of think of your story through photographs, of telling your story through photographs. And so this project is really about self-expression at this stage of your life. So hopefully those are kind of some helpful ways to think about when you're going to create these images. And then I mentioned PhotoVoice a few times, and so I just thought I'd talk about it a little bit because I think it can be a helpful tool in thinking about this kind of project. It's kind of, so PhotoVoice is a process in which people use photography to capture aspects of their environment and experiences and share them with others. And so it puts, as I said a few times with these projects, like puts cameras in the hands of people with valuable lived experience so that they can explore and share their perspective. And so that's the key words. You're exploring your own story through these photographs, and then you're sharing your perspective through your artist statement and through those photographs. And so then some of the things around PhotoVoice that is effective, it really tells your story through photographs and captures what life is like for you in your community. So think about what picture best describes your experiences. Like think about things that best describe your experiences that you want to capture. And then taking photographs of familiar scenes and people can really change participants' perceptions about their social and physical environment. So it's not just an exercise for the community to see your perspective, but also for you as photographers. So again, that expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words is really key here with this PhotoVoice concept, is kind of seeing what someone else sees is so powerful, and then it's more effective in many times than being told about it. In this case, you're doing both, but it's just a really wonderful way to share your story. And then what I love about PhotoVoice and this idea of putting cameras in the hands of people to share their lived experiences is that images can be understood regardless of language, culture, and other factors. So photography is just a wonderful way to do that. So with this project, as you know from the assignment, is that there'll be an exhibition. There'll be 2 exhibitions. There'll be an on-site exhibition at the RMG in the Bulkley Collection Quarter, which is pictured here. And this will feature around 30 to 35 photographs as well as artist statements. And this is where Greg touched on earlier, where it was referencing kind of that curatorial approach of somebody looking at your assignments. And then there's also going to be an online exhibition that will include all of the photographs submitted for this project along with artist statements that will be hosted by the Robert McLaughlin Gallery on our virtual RMG platform. So there'd be this wonderful opportunity to exhibit your work and share your stories with the community wider and at large. And I just threw this in, we can cover questions now, but I just put in some resources. If anybody's kind of interested in hearing more about the, the Photographic Society movement of, the record and survey movement, these are some of the books that are really interesting, as well as some links that are good examples of PhotoVoice projects and ways to think about PhotoVoice. So, but I'll just leave that on and we can cover questions now. I hope I didn't go too fast. I did, yeah.
Hi, Sonya. I'm going to jump in. So folks, before we get into question and answers, I just want to mention a few things. You'll be receiving your assignment 3 next week. So your instructors, whether you have Al or Miranda, myself, or Stephen, will be going through the assignment and what will be required for you to hand in. The deadline for this project is firm. So for students who want to be included in this opportunity, it's really important that you hand in your work on time and hand in all of the components. This is what we call in education a work integrated learning opportunity. So it's a real world opportunity with real world potential. And as Sonya said, we will be mounting an exhibition that will be launched in December of 2021. For the 30 to 35 students that will be curated into the final exhibition to be mounted at Robert McLaughlin Gallery, Durham College will be covering the printing of your works, and the Robert McLaughlin Gallery will be so kind to be matting and framing those works to be hung in an exhibition format. There's some other things that I just want to touch on briefly, and then I'd like to introduce Brian Stevens for a moment just to say a few words. We have to be sensitive when we're photographing our community. And what I mean by that is, you may have heard of things like cultural appropriation. So it's really important that we're sensitive and when you're dealing with people of other cultures. And hopefully your professors will go through that a little bit more in class with you, but it's really important that you are sensitive when you're out and photographing people. And as you know, we've talked a lot about media releases. It's really important if you want to photograph people that you ask their permission before you take their picture. The subject matter is wide open. The style of photography is also open, from journalistic styles, art, architectural, portraiture. As well, we saw almost some surrealist type photography when we saw the young man standing on Alexander Park, the lions and the sculpture. So we're looking for shots of everyday life and really looking forward to seeing what our students produce. And I want to thank the Robert McLaughlin Gallery. We had discussions, Sonya and I, to be inclusive. We understand that some of you are studying internationally and some of you are studying remotely. Primarily for those of you who are coming in class, we're looking for images of Durham region. We'll talk about that in class. The Durham region is not just Oshawa, it includes Ajax, Pickering, Whitby, and other communities surrounding. So we're primarily focusing on the stories told in our community as Durham region, where we reside at Durham College. But for those of you who are studying remotely or internationally, we want to be inclusive and include your stories as well. So that's why we're having the online exhibition space as well. If there are any questions afterwards, I'd be happy to answer them, and Sonya would be too. Brian, would you mind popping on for a moment and just saying a few words as our photography coordinator in 2021?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jennifer. And thank you, Sonya. What a great presentation. It really gave us a very clear picture as to the historical reference of the collection, as well as the direction that you're looking at the collection going forward. when I looked at it and I think about some of the historical contexts, people like, some photographers like Lewis Hine and his influence that he had, instrumental in changing child labor laws and things like that. When you're looking at some of the industrial images, or Margaret Burke White's shots of, the Chrysler building in New York, things like that. They all kind of resonated with me when I was looking at that. And when we think about everyday life images, you can look at the work of, and I'm sure for anybody who's going to be watching this, your professors are going to cover this in class, but there's an extensive list of photographers that have impacted, change in society and just documenting society. When you look at everyday life, like Robert Frank's The Americans, I mean, what an incredible collection of work that is. And, when you take a look through some of the other work, even through to something more, well, not that it's super current, but Nan Goldin's work, of the LGBTQ plus, the opioid crisis, things like that, that she's photographed as well, that Nan Goldin, I should say, is photographed as well. So, you really want to take a look at, some of those other relative things that can help influence you moving forward. The whole thing on perspective and prospective, like a point of view and in particular of the students using their own lived experiences. I think it's a great approach to this. And I think it's a great opportunity for students to participate in something that's going to have an impact, possibly on society in the future. As you were saying, Sonya, like 100 years from now, when people look back and look at these images, they're going to say, wow, what was going on back then? But outside of that, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. I appreciate, the RMG giving us this opportunity for our students, and what a great experience for them. And Jennifer, for coordinating this and working with Sonya, getting this through. And I'm excited to see the work, and I can't wait until we see what works are selected to hang in the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Fantastic. We're really excited as well. And for those of you in first year, this is a great opportunity again to learn these skills that we're teaching you in the classroom and tell your stories and communicate those to the wider public. This has been a project that's been 3.5 years in the making, and Sonya and I are just really happy to have this opportunity to work with all of our instructors at Durham College and as well as our students. And we're really looking forward to seeing the images that you capture of your lived experience in 2021 and give some insight and deeper understanding about the world that you live in today. Visual images, as we know, and as Sonya said, a picture's worth a thousand words. Photographs and video are very powerful communication tools. And the pictures that you decide to take can challenge stereotypes. They can provide a platform for more intense, emotionally engaging reflection for you as an image maker and for the wider public. So we're really excited to share that, and we're really excited to open up this exhibition in December of 2021. What will be coming from your professors next week is we'll look at the timeline. So these are real world timelines. We will have an exhibition, an opportunity for some sort of gathering. Sonya and I are still working on that, as we are in the midst of a pandemic. But we're really excited to share this with you. And I just want to thank everyone today that's joined. And we would be happy to take some questions should anyone have them right now.
I think this is a good combination. I've been giving assignments similar, like a then and now. So basically going through the history part, and then the students are going to shoot different places. And so, but expanding this to events is great. That's basically part of my background. I've been shooting lots of events around the Durham region, not only personally, but some work stuff, like I said, included as well. So I think students will have fun with this, but the big thing I think that's important is the story behind them. Having that story behind the pictures that makes a world of difference. I can use my entertainment photography stuff. I've got my personal stories for each image. And if I give that to somebody else to talk about, they don't know the behind the scenes, as you're saying it. So I think this is going to be good for these students. The only question, like I said, I guess we'll find out once the assignment is finalized, exactly how many images are students going to be handing in. You know, if it's going to be a matter of 10, or is it going to be a photo essay style and have, you know, a few? It just depends. But in the excuse me, but in the end, that story I think is going to be very important. And we'll have the photographer's name too, which is bonus.
Very important, yes.
Absolutely. And that's why in week 1, week 2, we're really talking about media releases and having our photographers and videographers sign these. We've talked about that a lot in all of our classes, and that's really important. So if you want to participate, you've got to sign the waiver to be included. So Al, thank you so much. Yes, it's more like a photo story. So if you look at the assignment, folks, it's going to come out next week. It's not due until week 8. However, the assignment itself is worth 15%. Part of that assignment will be you writing an artist biography, as well as writing some captions about what your work includes. What's it about? There was a question in the chat from Brooke in my class who asked, does it have to be about COVID? And I said, no, not at all. Can it be about COVID? Yes, absolutely. And Al, your great catalog of entertainment style photography, it really opens it up for anyone to have any sort of style that they want to try. And I think that's really exciting. So in terms of the assignment itself, you will have those details and your professors will definitely go through them with you next week. But those are just some of the granular things. Al, if you think back a few years ago, and folks in the room that don't know this, Al is our previous photo program coordinator, and Al is the person who helped bring the photography program to Durham College. So I've had the great privilege of working with Al and Brian now for 9 years, and Al designed a photography assignment that was called a gallery assignment. So it's very similar to this, where we'll write an artist bio and write about your work, a little bit of a statement and some captions, but really focusing on what story your pictures are telling. So that's as much as I'll reveal right now, rather than going through the entire assignment. But for those of you, the professors, we'll get that information out to you later today. Any other questions out there? And as Jay says in the chat, consent is sexy. I say that a lot in my class, so it's true.
Yeah, any questions I would have had, you just said you're going to go over. So I'll wait, and I'll have something more to say in class since I'm pretty quiet.
Jay, really, we need more people to talk like you. It's true. We'll go through all of the bits and bobs, how many images to hand in. Of course, we're going to ask you to shoot a lot. We've started to talk about, and we'll start talking about composition next week. Some of your instructors may be taking you on field trips this term, a great opportunity to go out and explore Durham's community, a great opportunity to get out in the car and take a Sunday drive and bring your camera. A great idea to look through the papers, see what's happening. If event photography is more your style, there's so many options for students, and I'm just absolutely thrilled for you, and I hope we can build excitement towards this project. If there are no other questions, though, I would like to very much thank our partner, Sonya Jones, and our special guests that have joined us today. Thank you so much, instructors and professors, for joining us, our students. And for all of you that will be watching this recording after the fact, certainly if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, Jennifer Bedford, anytime. That's jennifer.bedford@durhamcollege.ca. That information will be available to you in the assignment sheet. But just a heads up, you're going to be submitting work to your faculty to be assessed, as well as submitting work to me, so that Sonya and I can take a look at your work, and she has, again, you have an external perspective. So Sonya, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up today's presentation?
Yeah, like, if I know I shared a bit about the Thomas Buckley collection, but if anyone's interested in more information, or they have a particular interest in Auschwitz history or subject like that I've covered today, like, please just reach out at any point. I'm happy to share that resource to all of you. Yeah, and I hope to see you all at the gallery one day. And it's so great to meet a lot of the faculty who I haven't met before.
It's a great opportunity, and thank you so much. And Sonya is a great resource in our community, We have a very special photographic collection that you've just learned about if you didn't already know. And if you'd like to contact Sonya, by all means, I'd be happy to give you her information. And the Thomas Bulkley collection can be explored online. So if you're interested in taking a look at some of those images, we can make that resource available to students as well. So I want to thank all of you very much for watching this recorded presentation, for those of you who are not here live. And for everyone joining us today, we're really thrilled to bring you this real world experience as part of your first term, first semester at Durham College, and really excited to have you with us this year in 2021 and looking forward to seeing the images that you create and the stories you tell. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope that you have a very happy day and look forward to answering questions as they may come in.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sonya.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Brian.
See you guys.
Bye.